Welcome to AACR Alamo Educational Session. I'm so happy to be here. I'm Carrie Treadwell. I'm the Director of Patient Advocacy and Engagement at the American Association for Cancer Research, or AACR. And it is such an absolute delight to be here. This is my first time at this conference. It is an absolutely amazing conference. Before I get started, though, I want to thank our friends at the Alamo Breast Cancer Foundation for hosting this program, and congratulations. That's so wonderful, especially Carol and Jerry. And Jerry, I don't know where you are, but thank you all for being so warm and welcoming to all of us. I also want to take a second just to introduce some new AACR staff who are in the audience. They are patient advocates themselves, or they've been touched by cancer, and they do an incredible job engaging with our patient advocate community. Morgan Robinson, are you? There you are over there. Thank you, Morgan. Mike Beveridge. So Morgan is from the AACR Foundation, I should say. And then Mike Beveridge, he is leading all of our social media. So hashtag SABCS23, I've been told to share with you. But when you are engaging with us on any of those platforms, Mike Beveridge is the brilliant genius behind that. So thank you. And I don't know if we have anyone else here, but I do want to take a minute to thank somebody who is very critical to our patient advocacy program, and that is our CEO. I've been a patient advocate for about 30 years now. It's hard to believe, but the one thing that I did learn very early on is that you can't do anything without strong leadership and support, and we certainly have that at AACR. So March might be coming in. If you do see her at this meeting, please thank her, because we could not be successful, and certainly the SSP program could not be successful without her. So we're very grateful. All right, well, without further ado, we have an incredible program for you. And part of this is because you guys selected this topic. When I was asked to select a topic for this session, I did what I think everybody should do. I reached out to our patient advocacy community and said, what would you like to hear? What are the things that you want to learn about? And we started to get a theme back. We want to learn more about metastatic cancer. We want to learn more about engaging with underrepresented communities. We want to learn more about engaging or bridging the worlds between the scientific community and the patient advocate community. So there was one advocate, and I will not out you, but she happens to be an SSP advocate and an Alamo scholar. So she said, if you want to bring all of these topics in, I have the program, I have the project for you. It is a must-see for all advocates. And after calling Dr. Robertson and having our first planning session and learning about the great work from Laura and Leslie, I could not agree more. This is a must-hear about project. I do want to be transparent. I found out during that call that AACR is a funder for this project. It is in partnership with Pelotonia and the Victoria's Secret. And did not plan that, but I think it's a great example of AACR's role in bridging these two worlds together. So I'm really delighted. Okay, so without further ado, please join me in welcoming Maya Robertson from the Lindbergh Comprehensive Cancer Center at UNC, Leslie Glenn, I'm sorry, Project Life, I knew I was, sorry, I tried, and Laura Crandon from Touch for Life. They're going to do a wonderful presentation, and then we'll have time afterwards for questions from all of you and also our friends online.
Thank you so much, Carrie, for that warm introduction. And I will just say, as the scientist up on the stage, what an absolute delight and honor it is to be here presenting with two of my favorite, most cherished collaborators, colleagues, and truly a dream come true when I got that email from Carrie, because very frequently we see kind of this disconnect between the scientist and the patient advocates or community partners that we work with. And so I do not take lightly that all three of us are mic'd up right now and have an equal role in this presentation. And I just want to acknowledge that, because I see Laura and Leslie as collaborators, co-conspirators, accomplices in this work. And I very, very much look forward to sharing with you the work that I've done with both of these wonderful women and continue to do. And so the title of our session today is Centering the Lived Experience, a conversation on patient-partnered breast cancer. And really what we'll do is start out by introducing each of us individually and work through the process of how we even met to start with, the kind of work that we've been doing together some of the outcomes of that work and what we hope you can take away from our session today, and thinking about those of you in the audience who may be advocates yourselves and may be trying to figure out how you may want to engage in research across the spectrum, or if you're a researcher in this space, thinking about how you can thoughtfully engage and truly collaborate, emphasis on the collaborate with patient advocates. And so without further ado, I would love for my Laura to start introducing herself. If you could please tell us about who you are and what great work you do in the world.
So thank you so much. It's an honor and pleasure to be here. I'm Laura Crandon, and I'm the founder and president of Touch for Life, which really came out of my own experience with breast cancer, first with a primary diagnosis in 2016, and then brain mets in 2018. But I had the privilege of benefiting from biomarker genetic testing and participating in a clinical trial, targeted therapies that helped make me be here today. But then I began to realize that my sisters who looked like me did not often have the privilege that I had to have the treatment and the access that I had. And when I realized the disparities of us dying at a 41% higher rate, I had to do something about it, and so I founded Touch for Life. And the way that we go to market is 3 ways. One, out into the community. We partner with large, influential Black women's and men's organizations at scale to bring our content around the risks, biomarker, genetic testing, and family health history. The second way we go to market is because we know that the social determinants of health are not the primary driver of this disparity. It's really that your clinicians don't order the tests for you. And so I go out and speak to about 4,500 physicians, researchers, healthcare providers to challenge them to be more equitable and better in their standard of care application, inviting us to clinical trials and ordering the test. And lastly, we go to market. And the third way is policy. I've been a health plan executive for 15 years, and I understand the importance of policy both at the legislative level as well as the payer level, and so we advocate for policies around coverage. That's what we do, and of course, you see right there, Black Genes Matter is our big initiative that we launch as our platform. It's a movement to ensure that our community is educated, engaged, and empowered around getting the care that they deserve.
Thank you for that wonderful introduction, Laura. Leslie, who are you and what great work are you doing in the world?
Thank you, and thank you so much for inviting me. When I got the email from Dr. Roberson, I was like, yes, we're finally being heard. So my name is Leslie Kailani Glenn. I am Native Hawaiian and have been living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer for 11 years now. I started my advocacy journey back in 2015, not really knowing exactly what I wanted to do in the advocacy space. So I attended the Living Beyond Breast Cancer, Hear My Voice training at their very first inaugural class, and just kind of got my toes wet and was like, you know what can I do? I can tell people stories. So I started with this blog called Voices of MBC way back then. It seems like forever. When I was diagnosed in 2012, Ibrance was still a clinical trial. And so we've come such a long way. And as I was going through my advocacy journey, as well as my personal journey, I realized, because quality of life was so important to me, that whenever I approached an organization or I saw a program that I wanted to join, I was always stopped at the door and was told, we don't have anything for stage 4 patients. Come back to us when you are done with treatment. And I was like, okay. And it was a big conversation within the MBC community about, why are we being left behind? Why doesn't anybody have anything for us? And so in 2018, it was around there that I decided, Leslie, if you're going to complain about it, why don't you do something to fill the gap? And so it took me about 1.5 years to really think about what wellness and survivorship would look for the stage 4 community. And as we all do, our best ideas come in the shower. And I was, all of a sudden, I'm like, a wellness house, a virtual wellness house, where every room of the house has our different offerings. And so our website is set up as we have the kitchen where we do our cooking and nutrition classes, the garden where we do healing circles, yoga meditation, the office where we do legal clinics and education. And I didn't really know what the response was going to be when we first launched in 2021 during the pandemic. I feel like the pandemic really was one of the good things that happened to us because everyone went virtual. And first month I was like, oh, I hope I get 25 people sign up. And we had over 150 people sign up within the first 2 weeks. And now going on 3 years, we are over 1,000. And so this is definitely a need within the stage 4 community, and we are growing organically. And yeah, it's been such a joy to work with Dr. Roberson.
Thank you both for introducing yourselves. A little bit more about me as it pertains to the conversation that we are having today. I am an assistant professor of health policy and management at the UNC Gilling School of Global Public Health, and also a member of the Lineberger Comprehensive Cancer Center. I have been educationally trained as an epidemiologist, actually. I love numbers, I love data and things like that. However, before I went to graduate school, also at UNC, I did a qualitative undergraduate thesis where I was in Birmingham, Alabama, and I was interested in talking with both Black women who fell within the mammography screening range, as well as primary care providers, and about screening guidelines and things like that. And this was years ago, and now screening guidelines have changed a million times since then. But one of the things that really anchored me in that very early formative work that I had conducted is I had asked both these primary care providers and also these Black women who fell within the screening range, why do you think breast cancer disparities exist? And the amount of rich information that I got from both types of individuals, when I talked with primary care providers, I heard about things that we know, like later stage at diagnosis, higher rates of triple negative breast cancer, things that we know are true. When I talked to these Black women who fell within the screening range, who themselves did not have breast cancer, the things that came up were also true, but a bit different. They had talked specifically about putting the needs of others before themselves, such that certain symptoms got ignored or not being taken seriously about certain health conditions. And so as I kind of grew up academically, I realized that what I wanted to do with my work was combine my interest, my passion for data, with also bringing life to lived experience stories. And so as in graduate school, that I really decided to make a conscious effort to begin engaging with advocates that in a way that has extended throughout my faculty career in the projects that we'll expand a bit upon with Leslie and Laura today. Just to offer kind of a container of the conversation that we're having today, I did want to spend just a very brief moment talking about both the spectrum of research and the spectrum of patient engagement, because there are a wide variety of types of research to become involved in. Cancer research is not just one thing, and there are a wide variety of ways to engage as patients, patient advocates in research. I would, as I had called in my introduction, Leslie and Laura are my collaborators in this work, co-creators. I would say that that's on the very extreme end in a good way of being involved, but perhaps that's not in your bandwidth or capacity. There are still different ways for advocates to inform research. So talking just very briefly about the translational research continuum, this is from the NCATS, National Center for Clinical and Translational Sciences organization of the NIH. This figure shows the kind of dimensions of clinical and translational science, and this includes things like animal studies, very basic science, when we're talking at the cell and molecular level, genetic studies, preclinical research, things like clinical trials that we talk about all the time, going through clinical implementation when we do have the drugs and the tools and the devices, how are they being implemented in clinical practice? And then also public health on the population level, which I would argue is its own set of series of exploding bubbles as well, because there's the sort of work that I do as a cancer care delivery researcher. However, there are things like exercise interventions. There are a whole host of different types of public health interventions. And so maybe one aspect of the translational research continuum really appeals to you. Maybe you want to know about the researchers who are looking for the next targets and how we think about precision treating of metastatic breast cancer. Or maybe you're more interested in this population sort of space, thinking about care delivery, quality of life. And so I did just want to offer that what we'll be talking about today tends to be on the more public population health side of things, because that's the type of researcher that I am. Cancer research is not just one thing, and there are a wide variety of ways to get involved, I think, as many have seen throughout this meeting. In addition to the spectrum of cancer research, there's also a spectrum of engagement. And I really love this figure that kind of walks through kind of at, I would say, kind of lower touch, but still very meaningful levels, informing. And so providing input and information on researcher materials, outreach, those sorts of things, how researchers are engaging with the populations that they're interested in including in their research, being more involved potentially in a consultative sort of way on potentially actual study design or survey items or things like that. Moving through involvement where there's two-way communication, there's discussions about data and analysis and greater level of involvement. Then finally moving towards the highest levels of engagement, thinking about collaboration and empowerment, thinking specifically about the allocation of funds, thinking specifically about collaboration and making sure that things are co-created, participatory evaluation, and thinking about delegated decision-making as well, so that it's not just me as the researcher making all of the decisions about how research goes. And this goes across the entire research process. So engagement isn't necessarily something that just happens at the start of a study or when a grant is being written. It happens all throughout the research process. It starts before the grant is being written, at the idea generation phase. It happens while the grant is being written. It also happens during the conduct of the research, and then also the subsequent dissemination of the research. And so I did want to offer that, just for the sake of mentioning that the conversation we'll be having today focuses most specifically on this collaborate / empower part of the spectrum of engagement, as well as on the public and population health piece of clinical and translational sciences. But this is by no means exhaustive of all of the different ways that individuals can be engaged in breast cancer research. And so getting into some of my favorite stories to tell, the origin, how we met. In this next piece of the conversation, we'll be talking a bit about how I met both Leslie and Laura separately, which I think provide really compelling stories for how these interactions can even take place. And so, as I'm sure is the case for many researchers, it started with GRASP, that I know is an organization that is familiar to many folks in this room. And so, as I had mentioned, when I was a PhD student, I was interested in patient advocacy, but like many graduate students, I had no money. I had nothing to offer individuals or things like that. And so I found GRASP on Twitter, led by Julia Maues and Christine Hodgson. And I was really learning a lot from the content that they were sharing. And I had filed away in my mind, I was like, when I have money, I'm going to reach out to GRASP, and I want to work more closely with some of the organizations and individuals that they were connected to. And so I started my initial faculty position in 2021. And lo and behold, I reached out to Julia at GRASP. I explained my kind of research interest, what I felt I could offer to an organization, specifically in my research area. And I had mentioned that I was interested in partnering with someone who worked in the metastatic breast cancer space. And kind of a moment of reflection, I realized that my work in graduate school to date had been exclusive of individuals with metastatic breast cancer. And knowing what we know, knowing what has been shared earlier, this was something that I wanted to change very early in my career because it is so critically important. And so when I had reached out to Julia said, I know just the person for you. And that's how I met Leslie. And Leslie, I don't know if you want to pick up from there on how our connection started.
Yeah, so when Julia emailed me and told me about this potential collaboration, I was like, yes, because there's so little data based especially upon the survivorship of those that are living with stage 4 metastatic breast cancer. And knowing that there was a researcher who was interested, and like I'm at the beginning of doing Project Life. Like I really don't know anything. All I know is that, oh my gosh, there's a researcher that's interested in hearing the voices of metastatic breast cancer patients. I knew it was something that I wanted to say yes to, and because I was going to learn as well. And so, yeah, we just kind of kicked it off, and it just went from there. And Maya was she was so interested in what we had to say. It wasn't, she came in and said, okay, this is my idea and this is what I want. It was like, okay, this is my idea, but let's figure it out together. So give me your opinion on what is happening. And for to have someone to really listen and to want to listen to the community that you serve, I just thought this is like a match made in heaven, so to speak. So yeah.
And Leslie and I met for the first time in person at this meeting last year. Mm-hmm. So one of the important things as well is that none of us live in the same place. I live in North Carolina, Leslie lives in Oregon, Laura lives in the DC area. So all of this work has been happening virtually. And so I remember being here last year and just honestly the pure raw emotion of meeting Leslie for the first time after, at that point we had been working together for a little over a year actually virtually. So just to say that organizations like GRASP have such a huge role in being able to provide that matchmaking service, I would say, and really aligning skills with interest and with need as well. And so in contrast, I met Laura in a little bit of a different way and want to offer that example as well. And so when I met Laura, my initial faculty position was at Vanderbilt School of Medicine in Nashville, Tennessee. And in 2022, I was presenting, it was 2022. I was presenting at the National Society for Genetic Counselors meeting that was also held in Nashville. And I was presenting an abstract on some of my work with my collaborators at Vanderbilt that specifically focused on cancer treatment after germline testing for Black women with breast cancer. And, I didn't particularly think anything of it. I wasn't a genetic counselor. This wasn't my normal meeting. It wasn't a meeting that I would typically attend, but it was a meeting that was encouraged for me to attend by the mentors that I had at Vanderbilt. And boy, I am so glad that I did, because sitting in that audience at the abstract presentation was Laura Crandon, who then approached me after the session, and the rest was history. And Laura, I'll let you pick it up from there.
Yeah, what Maya didn't say is that it was standing room only, and I was sitting on the floor. I had just really kind of gotten into this work and started to understand these disparities, and it was at that conference and at SABCS that I learned some of the root causes of these disparities, and so I was in a learning mode. So when I saw the title of her presentation about documenting these disparities and looking at what was happening from a treatment perspective, to Black versus white women, I had to be there. And so I went right up to her afterwards and said, we have to talk. I'd really like to learn more about what you're doing. And really from there, we just have been collaborating ever since, working on really formulating how we approach the community and use the data to inform what our interventions can and should be.
And so really love both of these examples because to me they speak to the different ways of connection. Through my connection with Leslie, I met through Julia, someone that I had known already, and through Laura, I think really speaks to the power of scientific meetings. And I think for us as researchers, for the researchers in the room, we need to present as though advocates are in the audience, whether we think they are or not. And that is just one of the foundationally important takeaways that I try to make sure any kind of scientific presentation that I design, I deliver, I present as though Laura or Leslie or anybody else with lived experience that I'd want to connect with, it would be in the room. And so I want to offer these examples to both advocates and also to researchers that connection can happen in a wide variety of different ways. And both of these connections, I think, have led to such fruitful partnerships. And Laura, I would love if you could pick up talking a little bit in greater depth about some of the work that we've done and specifically the survey that you've conducted.
Oh, sure. And I do want to just say that it's as simple as going up and walking up and talking to someone and having a conversation. I was just so excited to see, I just had read the description, but then to see that a Black woman was studying about Black women was pretty amazing to me, particularly given that the demographics, even of genetic counselors, that less than 3% are Black. And so I was fascinated by that. And the learning that I was getting from the data to really back up the things that I knew intuitively, but now there was someone with evidence, real world evidence. So in May of this year, in fact, Touch for Life launched a survey. We wanted to understand, get a baseline of knowledge base around biomarkers, genetic testing. We also wanted to get attitudinal data around, what did people think about them? Would they want to know their risk for cancer? Would they want to know the results? Would they want to know the tests? What are some of the barriers, really as indicators? And so we launched in May using our network as part of our ecosystem. And in 2 days, we had over 340 respondents, men and women from the US, the Caribbean, and Canada, literally from leveraging our network. And I thought really nothing of it until I shared those results and the speed with which we got the response, because I went to Dr. Roberson to really say, we've got these results, we really want to make sure that they're codified, analyzed, and we're really gleaning what do these mean and interpret these in a meaningful way. And she said, wait, you got how many and what? Exactly. And she really put a perspective on it that I didn't have. That seemed like, I didn't know what to know. It was a number to me, but she talked about how difficult that is to get.
I can't do that.
No,
let's be honest. I could not do what Laura has done.
Many cannot. And it just really happened. And so we worked together so that the data, we could have someone really apply the academic rigor that's really important to the results that we had. And so what we found really is data that helped propel us in the work that we began to do around Black Genes Matter, because it said that folks want to know. Black people want to know the risks, they want to understand, they're willing to kind of absorb this information and do something with it, and they want to know their risks. And that really told us that we've got work to do. We've got a willing audience that no one's talking to. It's underserved. I recently watched the Tyler Perry documentary, and it talked about his approach to a market that no one was talking to. And that's how I feel about this. It's like no one's talking to us about biomarkers and genetics and the impact that it can have, not only on your risk factors, but also on your treatment. And we want to know, and we will take action. And that really gave us the impetus to then be bold about how we approach this problem.
Great. And I think that really, one of the things of the many things that I want to pull out there too, is that the survey was your idea and your design and conception. It was not me coming in saying, hey, Laura, I want to do a survey. I want you to recruit for me. It was you had this survey idea and you were like, I know this researcher with quantitative skills. How can we kind of make sense of what we're learning? And that's one of the things that I value so much about these partnerships. I can't tell you, it's really one of my greatest joys when I get a phone call or a text message or an email from Laura or Leslie or someone else and saying like, oh, I have this really interesting idea. How can I bring it to life? That's what gives me so much joy in my career. And I feel like this survey was a perfect example of that. It was something that Laura brought to life in a way that I could absolutely not do, skills-wise, but also bureaucracy-wise too, which we'll get into in a little bit. Laura's ability to conduct a survey within the confines of her organization at that time made a lot of sense for what they were hoping to do. And we'll talk into some of the highs and lows of doing this kind of work kind of within an academic framework. But I did want to pull that out, that one of the things that I really love doing is being able to apply my skills to what these women care so much about and to be able to see what we can create from that. And that's what I felt also happened with the collaboration with Leslie as well. As I noted, this was a collaboration that had started as a result of the connection that Julia made for me when I had expressed an interest in wanting to work specifically in metastatic breast cancer. And so the work that I had done with Leslie and Project Life over the course of last summer, we conducted a series of qualitative interviews with members of the Project Life community. And these interviews had a couple of purposes. They were to kind of understand people's general experiences with their MBC care, and also the fact that this was happening during the COVID-19 pandemic. So understanding COVID-specific disruptions on MBC care in folks' own voices about how these disruptions happened. We were also interested in looking at how people felt about Project Life, what they were getting out of it, what was resonating, how they would like to see the organization grow. And that was important data for Leslie to be able to think about the current and the future of the organization as well. And I include the study flyer that we used. And I use this as a teaching example very frequently because I think we spent weeks and weeks on this flyer going through many different iterations, very importantly. And I use this as a teaching example, particularly when talking with students and kind of the role of patient advocacy and patient input, because there's no pink on this. That was something that was important to the folks at Project Life that I had talked to, including Leslie, that they didn't want a pink flyer. It's not gendered. The hands at the top are of different skin tones, but they aren't necessarily gendered. Voice your experience is very centered. And so I wanted to highlight this because this is not the flyer that I would have come up with if I were left up to my own devices to design this. This is the flyer that really came through a lot of mutual collaboration, work, understanding, including the actual questions that were asked. And Leslie, I would love for you to expand kind of on our formative process and how we got this going.
Yeah, so just the excitement that I felt knowing that someone was interested in the metastatic breast cancer community and wanted to hear the voice of the community members. Not only was it going to be really beneficial for Project Life as we continue to curate our programming and what is important and not redefining our values, but really honing our values down. But I also knew that the metastatic breast cancer community was hungry to share their voices. And I knew that we were going to fill Dr. Roberson's spots immediately. It's like, as soon as we go live with this, your spots are going to fill up. Because patients are hungry. They want to tell their story. And they need to tell their stories because that's what drives data, that's what drives research, because everybody is coming at this from a different angle, and different things mean different things to different people who live with this stage. So we went through the survey questions about what Dr. Roberson was going to ask, and we fine-tuned them. And it was just really exciting to be a part of that process. It was my first time really being a part of putting something together like this and making sure that the questions were voiced in a way that included that inclusivity was important. So how the questions were voiced very important, as well as really wanting to, I mean, we can't really make sure when people are like, yes, I want to be a part of it, but we really wanted to have diversity and hear from, you know, everyone from Black, white, Asians, Hispanic, Pacific Islanders, men, women, the LGBTQ plus community. For those of us at Project Life, we do not care. You are welcome. You come as you are. Our doors are open for you. And I think that Maya was, Dr. Roberson, sorry, was able to really, was really able to encompass that just because of who she is. And I knew that she was authentic and wanting to do this in a very meaningful way. So.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, both of you can stop with the doctor. We're all good here. Yeah, and to the point too about what was able to be done as well. Very similarly, the study that we had done with Project Life, we conducted 36 qualitative interviews over a 6-week period, which is also amazing for that type of research as well. And that again, really wanting to give credit and acknowledgement that if I had just stranger me reached out to these people, that we absolutely would have not had that kind of uptake. And as my hope as a researcher from methodological perspective, I was hoping that 20 people would talk to me. This was my first study as a faculty member. I was terrified. I was like, I hope 20 people talk to me. And Leslie was right. The kind of responses that I had gotten had come through so immediate. People were so excited to talk about their stories. And one of the things that was also really great for me conducting this study is we heard from all types of folks with metastatic breast cancer. We heard from folks across races. We heard from folks across ages, which I think is very deeply important. We heard from folks who had young children at home, folks whose children had left for college. We heard from folks who were treated at the big comprehensive cancer centers that many of us are employed by. We heard from folks who were treated in the community. And I really valued that opportunity to kind of bring together different types of metastatic voices to talk about these key issues, and also Project Life as an organization. And so this is super, super hot off the press. This paper was just published this morning in Supportive Care in Cancer, which is so exciting. And in putting this slide in here, I didn't know that that timing would work out just like that, but you can read more about it. That one of the questions that I had asked and that had come up when we were doing kind of this formative work was around how would individuals reimagine metastatic breast cancer care? And so this was something that I verbatim asked everybody that I had talked to, and these were some of the salient themes that had come up, specifically thinking about referral processes for non-oncology services like mental health, sexual health, and palliative care. One of the common sentiments that had really come up that, you know, it really sticks with me is many folks had felt that they were just lucky to be alive, or it was just instilled in them that they were just lucky to be alive, and anything else that was secondary to that was secondary, that sexual health didn't matter, that mental health, it was like, oh, you have metastatic breast cancer, you're going to have mental health issues, that there was a general dismissal of the need for these quality of life related issues. And I know that these are the sorts of issues, that the gaps that Project Life aims to fill, but I think it's also a responsibility of the point of care as well to make sure that these gaps are being filled within the places where people are getting their care. The need for metastatic specific support services, which Leslie had alluded to earlier, that many of the resources that exist are very exclusive to folks who are on treatment for the rest of their lives. Thinking about connection to things like social work and patient navigation and clinical trials was a big thing that came up as well. Perhaps not surprisingly, many of the women that I had talked to had participated in clinical trials themselves or were interested in, and had mentioned finding Project Life or other amazing patient-led organizations to find this information about participating in clinical trials. And so again, we have a much more thorough write-up that was just published this morning that I am thrilled about, that really brings to life these voices of how folks would reimagine metastatic breast cancer care from the Project Life community. Then one of the things that I also want to acknowledge is that when Laura and Leslie work with me, they don't just work with me. I can't do this by myself. I am one person, and I am so thrilled and honored and humbled to have such a wonderful team of students who work with me on both of these projects with both Leslie and Laura, who work behind the scenes mostly on a lot of the day-to-day sorts of things. And my students know that working with me, it's not uncommon for me to just randomly tell them, drop what I just told you to do. I have something for you to do for Leslie or Laura. And that's one of the important things that I see is my role as a researcher, as well as this is person time that I have access to. And I know that even a couple hours a week or a couple of hours here and there can have such a big benefit to these organizations. And so especially if it's a slow week for me, or even if it's not, being able to lend the time of my students to these organizations, to Leslie and Laura. And the students get a lot out of this as well. You know, one of the things that is also very important for me as well is that this is part of their foundational learning experience as well. I certainly believe in experiential learning, and the things that they learn in working with me on these community collaborations are going to be very different than they learn in the classroom, and I hope that they can take some lessons with them in that. So I did just want to add a brief acknowledgement that while we are the three up here, a lot of this work is powered by the individuals on the screen as well. And so as we are coming into the tail end of our session, we talked a bit about both of these projects and ongoing work that we've been doing together in direct collaboration and partnership. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention the impact that we have, that I am so deeply proud of. And both of these collaborations are right around a year old, a little bit longer with Leslie. And the heights that we have been able to reach in the last year and some change has truly been remarkable. So Leslie, I would love if you could talk a bit. I know last year you were at the NCCS symposium. You've been talking a lot about the work that we've been doing together, and I would love if you can expand on how you've been able to spread the word of Project Life as a result of our collaboration.
Yeah, thank you. So it has been such an amazing ride. You know, I have read research papers and, you know, concerning metastatic breast cancer, especially in like the wellness area and the psychosocial things. And they always have these conclusions that blah, 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 this needs to happen, this would be a really good thing. And then I'm always left with the question, okay, and like, where's the next step? Where's phase 2? And there's always nothing. It's like there's this research, there's a need, and no one is answering it. And so I felt like this collaboration with Maya was going to kind of put some answers to the questions that were asked in research areas, as far as, you know, the financial impact, the social impact, the emotional impact, the spiritual impact. And I wanted to see if, you know, selfishly, if my idea was even credible. Like, am I barking up the wrong tree? What am I doing this for? And so finding out that, yes, this is really important. This is really important work. We're living longer. And those of us that, you know, have metastatic breast cancer, we want quality of life too. It's not that yes, we want to stay alive, but, you know, I want to be able to spend time with my family. I don't want to be hooked up to IV machines all the time. I want to stay active. So, you know, I want these things just as much as someone that is done with treatment. And so I'm very much into integrative oncology, which is different than alternative, like integrative yoga, acupuncture, therapeutic art, music, drumming, exercise. So that's the way that I see integrative oncology, that it shares with what you're doing with your clinicians and your cancer team. And it was something that was not very much recognized, really. It's when anyone saw integrative, they automatically assumed it was alternative. And so there's that big disparity there where you have to say, no, it's not alternative. Alternative is different than integrative. And so I became first part of the Society of Integrative Oncology and sharing about what integrative oncology means to those with metastatic cancers across the board. And started to get some good footwork where now it's starting to become a mainstream topic in different programs and conferences around the world. And you know, I like to think that I've been a champion for it. I will always be a champion for it. And being able to share what I have learned alongside with working with Maya and the poster presentations that we have done, and being able to share people's stories about why, you know, oh, what's so important about therapeutic art? Well, do you know how it changes people's lives in like an hour? Like they can have their own aha moments where they've been struggling for years and years and years, and all of a sudden they've painted a red dot and, oh my gosh, I have my answer. And you know, I'm such a proponent of people have within them the resilience to find their way and to make their way and to want to live well. And all I want to do is champion that. And I want to walk alongside my fellow peers that live with metastatic breast cancer. And I want them to live well. That's our tagline. Let's live well and grow together. And that's what we aim to do. And I feel like what Maya has done, and Maya, I mean, we're ready for you to prove even more. So
I'm ready too.
So it has been so great to feel like my idea is warranted and is needed in the community. So thank you.
Yeah, I mean, Leslie, I know that you meant that like slightly in a joking way at the end, but just thinking about how much the organization has changed and grown and shifted over the year of us working together, that I'm always on board to keep that charge up, to be able to provide that evidence. And think, like, quite honestly, we should be doing more of that, listening to folks with lived experience about what's important to them and what sorts of interventions they come up with as well. It doesn't always have to start with someone with a PhD or MD in the academy. That I hope that you can take away. One of the many things that you can take away from our time together today is that there are so many patient advocates out there. I have two of them sitting up here with me who are just so amazing, incredible, and thoughtful, and have such amazing ideas. It is truly a privilege and honor to lend my skills to be like, okay, so what can I do? I'm not coming up with the ideas. I'm supporting your ideas, and let's go. And so that's really the ethos that I try to bring to these partnerships. And then shifting gears to Laura, these are just a few of the snippets of the various sorts of public outreach that we've done. I'd love if you could expand on for the audience about some of the work that has happened in the time that we've started working together.
Sure. So a year ago at SABCS, really this idea of Black Genes Matter was a vision from God that was a zygote. Like, it was just a concept. And I began pitching it and presenting it, and I got a lot of receptivity to it and thought, wow, I'm really on to something. And we decided that we would, so Touch for Life has a monthly program called SOS, which stands for Soul Filling Our Sisters, which is around total well-being, particularly for women on a breast cancer journey. But we talk about things like menopause and sexual health after breast cancer diagnosis, mental health, et cetera. And I invited Dr. Roberson to be the guest for Black Genes Matter for our February Black History Month program, and and she said yes right away. It was a really big hit. But I also at SABCS introduced her. I mentioned that we go to market in 3 ways, and we work with community partners. And my sister in this battle, this struggle for health equity around breast cancer is Ricky Fairley, who runs Touch the Black Breast Cancer Alliance. And I introduced Dr. Roberson to Ricky, and Ricky had her on her show, The Doctor Is In, which is a weekly web series on blackdoctor.org. And we've also been invited and spoken at, for Juneteenth, UNC Lineberger, talking about the importance of family history. We were at the State of Black Health in Puerto Rico presenting on this type of collaboration between academic and community partner. And really there was eye-opening the uniqueness of the relationship that we have, in that not all academic researchers actually help support community organizations with their capacity with dollars. They come to us for access to our community, to recruit people in studies and things like that, and maybe there's a token there, maybe. For our members, and rarely for the organization. They're just like, thank you so much. You should be glad that we're doing this. And that was not the case with Dr. Roberson. She's been intentional about making us equals and making us, as Touch for Life, a consultant to her officially, and compensating the organization as such. I didn't realize that was rare until really the State of Black Health, as we were presenting on the panel, and we're talking about this type of collaboration, and folks are saying how amazing that is. But there's value in our voices. Our communities are taking time out. We're providing advice and consultation to these organizations, and that should be valued. I didn't realize that until we were in Puerto Rico earlier this year, but it's true. Right? And so I think it's important that as you're collaborating, as you're a community organization, you're an advocate, and you're using your time, your resources, your talent, that there's some consideration to at least ask for what will be that, kind of compensation for my time and consultation and advice that but Dr. Robeson's been really intentional about that, and that helps organizations like Touch for Life build capacity, right? And so I, in turn, it's pay it forward, said, that is exactly what we should do. So all the community partners that we work with, it's the same thing. We work with the National Panhellenic Council on Black Genes Matter for our big launch in October. And I sewed into that organization because they didn't have to recruit all the folks that they did to come and attend and promote our event. But it's important for them to build capacity. And those are the types of things that are really important for us to take away as advocacy organizations, that your time, your talent, your advice has a value to it, and there should be some tangible ascribed value to what you're providing. And I'm very grateful that I have this relationship, and she's shown me the way it should be. And so going forward, that's what I've been asking for as academic institutions come and want to work with Touch for Life, and what is the nature of this relationship that we're forming? How is it going to be codified? What are the incentives? Are they aligned? And so that's what we've been doing, is really getting out, sharing this collaboration and how this can be, also sharing the data, and jointly applying for grants to fund further research together. And that's what we've been doing.
Yeah. I really want to pick up on that piece and speak to my fellow researchers in the room just for a moment. I know no one likes to talk about money or funding or dollars. There's this kind of hush-hush culture about it. But if you want to work with patient advocates, find that money somewhere, please. I know I am very new and green to all of this, but if I, as a brand new assistant professor, can find dollars to work with these women, we owe it to ourselves, to our field, to science, to compensate folks for the time and effort that they give to our research. And so that is the hill that I will go down on forever and a day, because it is so important to me. And that is a large part why I did not reach out when I had no money, because I knew I had no money to be able to offer anything. And so now that I'm in a position where I do have material resources for these partnerships, And I don't want to make it sound like these relationships are transactional. They absolutely are not, but it is just an acknowledgement of that value of people's time. If we pay our collaborators through FTE and all of these sorts of things, we can find those dollars to pay our community partners as consultants, as co-Is, as subcontractors, what have you. And so that's a piece that I really want to pull out there. And don't get me wrong, it's a lot of paperwork. All three of us have really gone through the ringer with paperwork to make sure that those dollars could exchange hands. But with the patience they have had with me, I have been able to stick through to that value and intend to continue sticking through to that value. And I think that institutions and funders and all of the powers that be can certainly make these processes easier because the science is better when folks are meaningfully engaged. And so I just want to close very briefly sharing lessons that we have learned from, I would say, these cross-cut all of the topics and both of these partnerships that we have talked about. Just being open and honest. I have not gotten everything right. As I had mentioned, I was a brand new PI. The project I did with Leslie was the first study I had ever done as a faculty member. That was terrifying to me. But both of these women have had so much patience with me, have had so much grace with me as I learn as a new faculty member, and I am grateful for that. And I've also tried my very best to be open and honest when things are hitting the fan or not going well and things like that, because I owe that to them as well. And so just to close out, I'd love if each of you could just share just one nugget, I think, just of what you hope that our audience today takes away from our conversation.
You want to go? Okay, I'll go first. I think for me, when I was first embarking on this advocacy journey, my idea of science, I do not have a science background whatsoever. My degree is in business, in leading organizations, and so I always put the science piece on the back burner because I didn't think that that's where my voice mattered. And deciding to dip my toe in the water for science, I realized that it's bigger than what I thought. Like, I don't have to put the frog in the beaker and, dissect it and put the bones back together, if any of you did that in high school. But, it could be just the study of culture and people and anthropology and all of that. And what I realized with working with Dr. Roberson is that it was amazing to me. Like, how can you take this conversation and run it through something and get all this data out of it? To me, data out of words is really amazing. And I was just so blown away by it because I knew that this was very important. So knowing that, I had the resources to be able to, not all advocates, have the luxury that I do to work one-on-one, but maybe they can answer a survey and have their voice counted towards the numbers that show up on a poster. And understanding that working with a researcher doesn't have to be scary. Yeah. They're just as scared as you are. So
I don't bite.
Let's work together and just ask questions and be authentic. And most of all, I learned that no question is dumb. So still learning.
Yeah, I think one of the great things is I remember going down to North Carolina. I was going down for one of my treatments and we had dinner. And it was really about aligning and understanding incentives and objectives and like the world of academia. I didn't know anything about that. I didn't know how it worked. It was fascinating to me to understand how
I remember that conversation. You thought I could set my own salary, and I had to let you know that was not actually
I had never heard of that. I mean, I come from corporate America, right? I mean, running these like billion-dollar portfolios, whatever, venture capital, all that kind of stuff. Like, I was like, much as you can get in, you get in. I had no idea in that, and just understanding, like, how does academia work, and what does success mean for you? I remember asking that, what does success mean? How can I support you in you being successful in your goals. Like, let me understand what they are, and then what can I do to help advance those goals? And then mutually understanding that from the Touch for Life or the advocate perspective, what's important to us, what are our goals, and things like that. And having those frequent check-ins, because again, we're coming from two different worlds, and so I think that we can do things this way. And then there's that thing called IRB. That was like a buzzsaw to me, kind of, oh no, Laura, we can't do that, or we have to run this by them, or that. So really understanding that and like frequently checking in on expectation setting. I know there've been times when I'm like, oh, we could do this or this, and she's like, wait, now I'm working on these major proposals. It takes this time. We can't pursue that this year, but maybe we could do that next year. And I'm like, okay. But just having that transparent conversation about what those expectations are, what the limitations are, frequently checking in, are we meeting the goals, all that sort of thing. I think that's really key, because it's a conversation and relationship of two organizations that are trying to do the same thing, but have different guardrails and approaches to it. And so as long as you're transparent about that, I think it can work. And then lastly, I would say, making sure that you're, just get started, like as an advocate organization. If there's a question you have, something you want to study, something you want to research. I mean, last year, this time, there was a presentation I saw. It was intriguing to me. I looked the person up on the app, sent an email to the professor and said, to the researcher and said, hey, I'm curious about this aspect of your research. She responded right away. That was another data point for me. Got a relationship going. It's kind of as easy as that. If you're at a session and you're curious, going up to the person or asking them afterwards might be an opportunity to get the question that you need answered about the community that you serve. Could be right here in these hallways.
And with that, thank you so much to the audience, to the Alamo Foundation, to SABCS and AACR for allowing me and allowing us to share something that brings such great joy. I would say definitely to me and to all of us. With you, I hope that there was a nugget in there for all of you, depending on where you are coming, no matter where you are coming from, this conversation. And I love that Laura always closes on an action item, and so borrowed this from my dear colleague, and would like to encourage you to at least ponder, now that you know about patient-engaged research partnerships, what action will you take? Thank you so much.
Thank you. So we have about 10 minutes for questions. If anyone would like to go up to the mic. And also our friends online, please submit your questions. Please go ahead.
Hi, I'm Jeannie Regnanti. I'm with the Tiger Lily Foundation. First of all, I really love what you did here to inspire everybody in the room. I do believe that patient insights inspire innovation, and we must do research and get input from patients. I was with Merck for about 33 years, and when I left, I had one aha about patient engagement and how pharmaceutical companies engage patients. And we talked about this a little bit. They don't pay them, or they don't know what to pay them. So I went to the National Health Council, which is the largest membership organization for patient organizations, and they put together, with the help of pharmaceutical companies, patient organizations, a fair market value calculator. And a lot of people don't know about it, but if you just type in National Health Council fair market value calculator, there's a calculator that comes up. I think every researcher in America should have this. So you can input number of hours, type of engagement, level of engagement, whether or not it's live or virtual, and it gives you a range of what patients should be paid for their input. So please share it with community-based organizations, patient organizations, researchers, because that is the standard, and it's been created, but nobody knows about it.
I didn't know about it. Thank you so much for sharing that. Thank you.
So it's the National Health Council Fair Market Value Calculator. It comes right up, and it's very easy to use.
It is.
Please share it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for that question. I do want to so while you're, please.
No,
Oh, thank you. Have a great day. I apologize. We talked earlier a little bit about funding, and we were talking about how different funders have different restrictions. And so it's probably good for this audience to know, too, about the different types of funding and how that operates, if you want to just elaborate a little bit.
Yeah, thank you, Carrie, for that question. You know, without being too specific, but certain funders have restrictions, or stated or unstated, about who can be a co-investigator on a grant, and that can pose a lot of challenges if you want to have the level of engagement that I would say that we have, that to me really rises to that level of co-investigator, goes beyond consultant. And in those cases, it can be really challenging to apply for those funding opportunities and have kind of a meaningful distribution of power. Where I've seen a lot more flexibility is specifically in the foundation and philanthropic spaces, where we are more tied to deliverables rather than actual allocation of who gets what dollars. And essentially all of this work that we've been talking about today has been either philanthropically, foundation, or in some way industry sponsored. And I think that that's important to note, that there are a lot of hurdles that are put in place by some of, I think, the gold standard funders that we as researchers are expected to kind of aspire to. But to do this meaningful, truly collaborative patient-engaged research, we need flexibility on how those funds can flow.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Julia?
Thank you. This was amazing. I think I wanted to point out to everyone here that not only is Maya doing work that is important and that we've been asking for so many years, but she is brilliant and absolutely the most productive person I've ever seen. She probably has a team of 10 people, because the amount of submissions and answers, and it's just incredible. We're so grateful to not only get a researcher that completely gets us, but is also like a star. So really, thank you for that.
Agreed.
And I just wanted to make one point about remuneration of advocates. And I think I said the same last year, but I've learned, especially those of us that are on disability, so there's a complication with getting paid. So what we see is a lot of people work for free. Right? Because we can't get paid. And that's great, and we want the patient voice included, but we don't realize the harm that we're doing to the research by not letting the voice of people that can't afford to not get paid to be included. So I think we have to come together as advocates and find mechanisms to get money to go somewhere else if we can't get paid ourselves. But if I work for free, why would someone want to work with an advocate that can't work for free and has 2 jobs and raises a family, and their time is actually very valuable, and they do need that money for the work that they do and deserve to get. So.
Yeah, thank you, Julia, for that tremendously important point. Thank you.
So we have someone coming to the mic.
Thank you guys so much for this talk today. The panel is absolutely amazing. My name is Beulah Bragg, and I am the CEO for Sisters Working Out in Chicago. And this is my first opportunity to actually join this event. And basically, if I wasn't so old, I'll do flips for this meeting today. But since I can't, I just decided to come up and talk about it. But you basically talking about all the things like grassroots organization like myself, who has been volunteering, as my sister said, for I've been volunteering for this work for 18 years. And we've been in existence 23 years. So I've finally figured out how to get some money for what it is that we're doing for our community. And the problem was we had to take that fund and put it back into the organization because we wasn't getting any. But what I liked about Laura is sharing. I know I heard the doctor say, everything is about funding. But what I have a problem with is people's not understanding your value. Especially now, I didn't learn out of 23 years, my value in what I do in my community that you do not respect that. So if we don't get money for something, that's fine. But don't let me find out you got $5 million and want to give me $50,000 for 5 years. And then at the end of your 2.5 years, you come back and say, oh, well, the academic made a mistake. We need 10% more of that back. But they got you on the phone and doing all this research 5 days a week. So $5,000, $10,000 a year. We're not talking about a month. We're talking about a year. So all we ask you to do is value our times the way we value yours.
Yeah.
Thank you all so much.
You know, you bring up an excellent point. I think that, you know, so I've been doing this for a long time, and the conversation started with, it'd be nice to get patients involved, to, patients have value. Then the question was, what are the metrics? How should we engage them? I think now the question is, if they are truly collaborators, which I think we all are, me included, I think we're all collaborators, how do we fit into that stakeholder role, and how do we get compensation? What is the business model to include us so that we have a more active voice? I think we're there, and I think actually your project is a great example. When we are being asked, what are the metrics? I think we can all go to Project Life and say, here you go, here's a great example of the value of bringing patient advocates into the conversation. Now let's talk about how to compensate them or make sure that they're true collaborators. I really, really thank you for all of this. We have maybe, Patty Spears.
Say one more thing. I can tell you, I'm at UNC Chapel Hill, and when Maya showed up, everybody was so excited she came back. It's like, oh my God, she's back. You know, she's just an incredible researcher and collaborator, and she's already spoken to my patient advocate group at Lineberger, said yes right away, and gave a great talk and just engaged with everyone afterwards for 30 minutes at least on the call. It was great. And at Lineberger, they do value, you know, we've been working in patient and community engagement, and we work with the CTSA a lot. And they have compensation rules and stuff, and they go by the fair market value. So we incorporated that into Lineberger as well with Shelley Earp. And so we compensate anybody on a board or a council with a yearly honorarium, you know, and those are for those little interactions that we have. And then anything that anybody does ad hoc that we can pay for, we pay for. And we tell them whether an interaction is paid or not. Type of thing, and we encourage compensation on that. But I think this is at a bigger level. This is at a real collaborative level where you're really co-investigators on a grant type of thing. So I think it would be nice to see some kind of work around that, on how institutions can do that, because working at institutions is really hard to get. I mean, just getting the collaborator form at UNC took like 2 years. But you know, I think that, you know, working on that would be a really good project type of thing to do.
A great project.
Patty, thank you for raising that. And if I could just briefly for a moment, so still embargoed. Laura and I recently got a grant funded together, which is very exciting. And I mentioned that, thank you. I mentioned that in response to Patty's comment because you know, as researchers, very frequently we have pre-award people that we work with on our submissions. And I went to my pre-award person. This is my first grant I submitted when I got back to UNC. And I went to him, his name's Robbie, and it is a wonderful individual. And I said to him, I'm having a patient collaborator on this grant. And I don't know how we're going to do it, but we're going to figure it out. And that made such a difference. Robbie figured it out. He worked directly with Laura on the budget, on things like that. And so that he was really willing to rock and roll with me and get on the phone with Laura and kind of hash those things out made such a difference. But that's not possible at all institutions. I mean, if I was potentially assigned somebody else or at a different place, I could have gone to pre-award with that suggestion. They would have been like, it's not possible. And one thing about me, you're not going to tell me something's impossible. I will figure out a way to make it possible, especially when it comes to these women. I will figure out a way to make it possible. And so I'm glad, I am so thrilled that at that point in time, like the institution didn't stand in my way. He was on board, we will figure it out. And I think it was like some stressful 7 p.m. phone calls, but we did get it, we got it figured out.
Your power outage and everything.
Yeah. We got it figured out. So, I mean, though, I just want to really acknowledge like the staff members too at these institutions and things like that can make a big difference, and like he really went up to bat for me, and I am grateful for that, because I know that had a big role in why it ultimately got funded.
Yeah, that and to really think of us as co-investigators. I mean, she was intentional about that, right? That puts us at a whole different level than just on the ad board type of things, which is more transactional. It's really, strategic and intentional, and that takes a lot of guts. But also we talk through things like intellectual property ownership, right? And had those conversations, because it's not just kind of take everything. Yeah. It's really about, if when you're a co-investigator, how do you kind of jointly own those results? And so we're intentional about that and working through those things. And so those are the things that it's really important to have somebody who's a champion inside the organization who can think this way. And she really is a rock star and really strategic in what she does. But it really leads to meaningful results to get our community's voice heard and studied and published.
Thank you. Okay, I think we have time for one more question.
Hi, Deb Tobin with the Research Advisory Network at the Carbone Cancer Center in Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you so much. This is a great panel. Got lots of great information, so thanks to all of you. My question is short and sweet. Do you have the citation for the article that's going to be published?
The one that came out today?
Yes.
I do. It's on the supportive care in cancer, and it's called Reimagining Metastatic Breast Cancer Care Delivery, and I can connect with you after to send you the direct link.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Well, I have a book full of takeaways that I don't have time to read to you, but one of the things that struck me the most, well, first of all, the fact that you did this all within a year is absolutely incredible. So think about the things that we can do going forward after this meeting. We're just going to change the world, and we're so inspired by you. I heard words like, we were terrified, we were nervous, but just do it anyway.
Do it scared.
Do it scared. Just do it. Just be present, be available, sit on the floor of meetings, just engage with each other. Just to close out, it was very appropriate that we were talking about funding. One of the important jobs that I have today is to thank the sponsors for the Alamo Advocate Program. And I am sure that I am probably going to mispronounce some of these names, so forgive me, but a special thank you to Exact Sciences, Genentech, Merck, Novartis, Daiichi Sankyo, GE Healthcare, Menarini, Stemline, Seagen, Lilly, Pfizer, ISA, Viatris, and the Joe and Dorothy D. Brown Foundation, and the Carpenter Foundation, and CMP, last but not least. And thank you to all of you for joining us, taking time out of your schedule to be part of this session. Thank you again to our panelists.